Earth was losing the war, until an alien defector revealed where humanity's hidden ship was waiting. The sky above New Manila was not blue anymore. It had not been blue for 3 years. It was the color of rust, painted that way by the ash of burned cities and the smoke of dying ships that fell from orbit like slow, ugly meteors. Commander Elena Voss stood on the roof of the command bunker and watched a piece of the destroyer Argus break apart above the clouds, tearing into 3 pieces that would each land somewhere far away and kill people who had already lost enough. She did not look away. She had learned not to look away. Looking away did not stop the war, and it did not bring back the ships, and it did not stop the Korath Dominion from pushing closer to Earth with every month that passed. 3 years ago, humanity had a fleet of 400 warships. Now it had 61. 3 years ago, humanity controlled 12 colony worlds. Now it controlled 2, and one of those 2 was under siege. The Korath were not just winning the war, they were finishing it. Elena was 38 years old, and she had been a soldier since she was 19. She had seen the first Korath ships arrive at the edge of the solar system, huge and silent and shaped like teeth. She had watched Earth's diplomats try to speak with them, offering peace, offering trade, offering anything. The Korath had answered with fire. There had been no negotiation since. There had only been retreat, one system at a time, one fleet at a time, until humanity was pressed back against its own homeworld with nowhere left to go. She walked down from the roof into the bunker, where the air smelled like recycled oxygen and burnt coffee. Screens lined every wall, showing battle reports from the last engagement near the Martian defense line. The numbers were bad. They were always bad now. 12 ships lost. 4 ships damaged beyond repair. The Korath had lost nothing that mattered to them. Commander, a young officer named Priya Nandan came to meet her, holding a data slate like it might bite her. Admiral Reyes wants you in the war room. He says it is urgent. Everything is urgent, Elena said, but she followed anyway. The war room was a cold, gray space, 3 floors beneath the surface, built to survive an orbital strike, though nobody really believed it would survive one, if the Korath decided Earth was worth the trouble of a direct hit. Around the table sat the remaining commanders of Earth's defense forces. There used to be 20 of them. Now there were 7. Admiral Marcus Reyes stood at the head of the table. He was 61 years old, gray at the temples, and he looked like a man who had not slept properly in a very long time. His uniform was pressed and correct, because he believed that even in defeat, a soldier should look like a soldier, but his eyes were tired in a way that pressing a uniform could not fix. "Sit down, everyone," Reyes said. "I want this to be quick, because I don't think we have much time to waste anymore." Elena sat. The others sat. On the main screen, a star map appeared, showing the solar system and the red markers that indicated Korath fleet positions. There were a lot of red markers. There were more red markers every week. "The Korath fleet at the edge of the system has grown," Reyes said. "Our scouts report at least 200 capital ships, with more arriving. Our best estimate says they will begin their final assault on Earth within 6 to 8 weeks. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to ask what final assault meant. It meant the end. "We have 61 warships," Reyes continued. "We have enough soldiers for maybe 3 more major engagements before our numbers are too low to matter. We do not have the industrial capacity to build new ships fast enough. We do not have new allies coming to help us, because every species we have reached out to is either already conquered by the Korath or too afraid to stand against them. So what do we do?" asked Commander Diego Alvarez, a broad-shouldered man who had lost his own brother in the Battle of Ceres 2 years earlier. "Sit here and wait to die with dignity?" "No," Reyes said. "We fight. We fight because that is what we do. But I called this meeting because something happened 3 hours ago that I think all of you need to know about." He tapped a control, and the star map changed to a security feed. It showed the outer perimeter of Earth's orbital defense grid, a thin line of sensor buoys and small patrol craft that watched for incoming threats. In the feed, a single small ship appeared out of nowhere, its markings unlike anything human intelligence had on file. It was not a Korath warship. It was too small, too strange, built with curves that no human engineer would have chosen, and no Korath engineer either, as far as anyone knew. "This ship did not fire on our forces," Reyes said. "It transmitted a signal, in a language our systems could not translate at first. Our linguists worked on it for 2 hours. When we finally understood the message, it said one word, over and over: truce. A truce from who? Elena asked. The Korath don't send truce ships. They don't negotiate. That's exactly it, Reyes said. This isn't a Korath ship. Our best analysis says it belongs to a species we've never directly fought. We've heard rumors of them before, from captured Korath communication logs. They're called the Severin. As far as we understand, they are, or were, a client species under Korath control. Conquered a long time ago, forced to serve in the Dominion's war machine. So it's an enemy soldier ship, Alvarez said. Could be a trick. Could be a bomb. It could be, Reyes agreed. We scanned it 6 different ways. No weapons that we could detect. No power signature large enough to hide a serious warhead. 1 passenger aboard, according to thermal imaging. We brought it down under heavy guard, and we have the passenger in a secure holding room right now. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach, the same feeling she used to get right before a battle. You want to talk to it? I want you to talk to it, Reyes said. You've handled xenolinguistics work before. You've got a mind for this that most of the rest of us don't. And frankly, Commander, we are running out of time, and running out of options. If there is even a small chance this alien has something useful to tell us, I need someone smart enough to find out, and skeptical enough not to be fooled. Elena looked at the frozen image on the screen, the strange little ship sitting dark and quiet in a hangar bay somewhere below them. When do I meet it? Now, Reyes said. The holding room was small and plain, with thick reinforced walls, and a single transparent barrier separating one half of the room from the other. Elena walked in with 2 armed guards behind her, though she suspected that if this alien wanted to hurt her, guards with rifles would not be much help. She had read the preliminary reports on the way down. The being behind the barrier was called Kale Threshy, and it was, according to the report, cooperating fully, which in Elena's experience with alien encounters meant almost nothing at all. She had seen images of Severin before, blurry photographs taken from destroyed Korath shipwreckage, showing a species that stood a little taller than humans, with gray-blue skin, elongated limbs, and large dark eyes, suited for seeing in dim light. But seeing a photograph and standing across from a living one were very different things. Kale Threshy sat on a metal bench, hands folded in its lap, in a posture that looked almost deliberately calm, as if it had practiced looking non-threatening. When Elena entered, it stood, slowly, and inclined its head, in a gesture that looked close enough to a human bow, that she wondered if it had learned the gesture just for this moment. You are Commander Voss, it said, in a voice shaped by a translation device clipped to its throat. The device gave the voice a flat, slightly metallic quality, but the words were clear. I was told you would come. You speak our language, Elena said. It was not a question, but she wanted to hear the answer anyway. I have studied your broadcasts for 11 of your years, Kale said. Your radio signals, your recorded messages, your entertainment programs. The Korath Dominion required some of us to monitor enemy communications. I used that duty to learn more than they wanted me to learn. Why are you here? Kale was quiet for a moment, and its large eyes seemed to study her, as if deciding how much truth she could carry. Because the Korath Dominion is going to destroy your species within 2 months, unless something changes, and because I believe something can change. That's a big claim, Elena said. Explain it. My people, the Severin, were conquered by the Korath 400 of your years ago, Kale said. We were not always slaves. We were once a spacefaring people, much like you, with our own fleets, our own wars, our own mistakes. When the Korath came, we fought them for 11 years before we lost. Since then, we have served them. We build their ships. We crew their support vessels. We do not fight on their front lines, because they do not trust us with weapons close to their own forces. But we hear things. We see things. We remember things they think we have forgotten. What things? Kale took a slow breath, an oddly human gesture that Elena suspected was also learned rather than natural. There was another species the Korath fought, long before they found the Severin, long before they found you. A species called the Threnai, Ibixgath. They fought the Korath for almost a century, and they lost too in the end, but not completely. Before their homeworld fell, the Threnai built something, a ship, not like any of your ships, or any Korath ship, A ship built to wait, built to hide, built to wake only when it was needed. Elena felt the guards behind her shift slightly, the way soldiers do, when a conversation turns towards something that might matter. Why does that concern us? Because the Threnai hid that ship somewhere close to your solar system, Kale said. I do not know if this is true with certainty. I only know what I heard, whispered among Severan engineers who serve on Korath command vessels, who themselves heard it from old records the Korath tried to erase. The Threnai believed that one day, another species would rise near that place, a young and stubborn species that might need what they had built. They left it as a gift. A weapon large enough, or clever enough, to change the outcome of a war that should already be lost. And you think that species is us? I think it might be, Kale said. I came here, alone, at great risk to myself, because I am tired of watching the Korath erase every people who refuse to kneel to them. I watched them do it to my own ancestors. I do not want to watch them do it to yours. If there is even a chance this ship exists, and a chance you can find it before the Korath finish what they started, then I believe it is worth the risk of coming here and telling you, even if you decide not to believe me. Elena studied him for a long moment. She had questioned prisoners before, and liars before, and desperate people who would say anything to survive. She could not tell, from Kale's face and posture alone, which kind of person this was. But there was something in the stillness of him, in the way he did not overstate his claim, that made her want to believe him more than she wanted to admit. Do you know where this ship is? She asked. I know a location, Kale said. Not the exact place. A region of space, several days' travel from here, in a system your charts call by a number rather than a name. The Threnai were careful. They did not want the Korath to find it either. But I believe, with the right search, it can be found. Elena turned, and walked out of the room without another word, leaving Kale standing quietly behind the barrier. She needed to think, and she needed to tell Reyes what she had heard, and she needed to decide, along with every other tired and desperate commander left in this war, whether Earth's last hope was real, or whether it was a beautiful lie told by an alien who wanted something they had not yet guessed. Outside the holding room, Priya was waiting, her face pale. Well? She asked. Get me everything we have on old star charts near the outer systems, Elena said, and get me Reyes. I think we might have found a reason to keep fighting a little longer. Above them, unseen, the Korath fleet continued to gather at the edge of the solar system, growing larger every day, patient in the way that only a species which has already won 100 wars can afford to be patient. They did not know about the small ship that had slipped past their outer patrols 3 hours earlier. They did not know about the story it carried, and for now, that ignorance was the only advantage humanity had left. Reyes listened to Elena's report in silence, standing with his arms crossed, staring at the star map still glowing on the wall. When she finished, he did not speak for almost a full minute. You believe him, he said finally. I don't know if I believe him, Elena said, but I believe we don't have the luxury of ignoring him. We have 6 to 8 weeks before the Korath finish us. If there's even a small chance this ship is real, I think we have to look. And if it's a trap? If the Korath sent him to lure our remaining forces away from Earth, into some ambush in deep space, so they can finish us here while our best ships are gone chasing a ghost story, then we lose faster than we were already going to lose, Elena said. But if we do nothing, we lose anyway. At least this way, there's a chance. Reyes was quiet again. Around them, the war room hummed with the sound of monitoring equipment, tracking a fleet that grew larger every hour, counting down toward an ending that everyone in that room had already begun, quietly, to accept. I'll need to speak with the council, Reyes said. This isn't a decision I can make alone. Sending ships away from Earth's defense, on the word of an alien we captured 3 hours ago, based on a legend about a weapon that might not exist. It's a gamble that could cost us everything. Everything is already at risk, Elena said quietly. We are already going to lose everything, unless something changes. I would rather gamble on a chance than wait quietly for the end. Reyes looked at her for a long moment, and something in his tired face shifted, just slightly, the way a man's face shifts when he remembers, for a moment, why he became a soldier in the first place. Get some rest, Commander, he said. Tomorrow, we go to the council, and if they say yes, I want you leading the expedition. You found this thread. You should be the one to follow it. Elena nodded, though she did not go to rest, not yet. She went back to her quarters, but instead of sleeping, she sat at her desk and pulled up every old record humanity had ever gathered about ancient, vanished civilizations, about ships that could sleep for centuries, about wars fought long before humans had learned to leave their own atmosphere. She found fragments, rumors, half-translated Korath records that mentioned a species called the Threnai, only in passing, as an enemy defeated long ago and mostly forgotten. It was not much. It was barely anything at all. But it was more hope than she had held in her hands in 3 long years of losing, and she intended to hold on to it as tightly as she could, for as long as it lasted, because somewhere out past the edge of the solar system, a fleet of 200 Korath warships was gathering, and Earth did not have very much time left to decide whether an alien's whispered story was a foolish hope or humanity's last real chance. She did not sleep that night. Instead, she watched the star charts scroll past on her screen, searching for a number instead of a name, a place where an old and vanished people might have left something behind for a young and stubborn species they had never even met. Near dawn, Priya knocked on her door, holding 2 cups of the bitter recycled coffee that had become the only kind of coffee anyone remembered anymore. She sat down across from Elena without being asked, the way people do when they have worked beside someone long enough to stop needing permission. "You really think it's real?" Priya asked. "This ship?" "I think it doesn't matter what I think," Elena said. "What matters is what we do with the little time we have left. If we sit here and wait, we already know how this ends. I've seen the numbers as many times as you have. 61 ships against 200, and more coming. We won't survive contact, not for long. And if the alien is lying? Then we lose a handful of ships chasing a story, instead of losing everything defending a line we can't hold anyway," Elena said. "I keep turning it over, and I keep landing in the same place. There's more to gain by looking than by giving up." Priya turned her cup slowly in her hands. "Reyes trusts you. The council will listen to him, and he'll want you standing beside him when he asks them to bet on this. You should be ready to answer every hard question they throw at you." "I know," Elena said. "I've been trying to guess them all night." She did not say the other thing she was thinking, which was that she was afraid. Not of dying. She had made her peace with that possibility years ago, on the day she watched her first ship burn. She was afraid of hoping again, after 3 years of learning not to. Hope had a way of costing more than despair ever did, because despair only took your comfort, while hope could take your heart along with it. The council met in a chamber that had once been used for meetings about trade routes and colony budgets, back when humanity still believed the future held more choices than survival. Now it held 9 tired representatives from the surviving nations of Earth, men and women who had watched their populations shrink under bombardment and their resources dwindle with every passing month. Reyes stood before them with Elena at his side, and Kale Threshy, brought up from the holding cell under heavy guard, standing quietly a few steps behind, its large dark eyes taking in the room without fear. The questions came quickly, sharp and suspicious, exactly as Elena had expected. Why should we trust a Korath slave? Why should we risk our last ships on a legend? What does this creature want from us, truly, and what happens if we say no? Kale answered each question calmly, without flinching, without raising its voice, as if it had expected every one of them and had already made peace with the answers. "I want nothing from you that I have not already told you," it said, near the end. "I want the Korath to lose. Once, somewhere, to someone. I have waited 400 years to see that happen. I would rather die trying to help it happen than live another year watching them win." There was a long silence after that. Elena watched the faces of the council members, watched doubt and desperation fight for control behind their tired eyes. In the end, it was not certainty that moved them. It was the simple truth Reyes spoke aloud, the truth every person in that room already knew, and had been avoiding for weeks. "We are going to lose this war within 2 months, if nothing changes," Reyes said quietly. "I would rather lose while reaching for something, than lose while doing nothing at all." The vote was close, but it passed. An expedition would be assembled, a small and fast one, built around secrecy rather than strength, tasked with following Kale Threshy's fragile trail of memory, out past the edge of known space, toward a system marked only by a number, in search of a ship that might not even exist. Elena Voss would lead it, and somewhere out past the solar system, the Korath fleet continued to gather, patient and certain, counting down the weeks until the final assault, unaware that a defector's whisper had just bought humanity one last, desperate chance. The ship was called the Meridian, and it had once been used for quiet diplomatic trips between Earth and its colonies, back when diplomacy still meant something. Now it had been stripped down and refitted in a hurry, its comfortable passenger cabins replaced with weapons lockers and extra fuel tanks, its polished halls covered in exposed cables and hastily welded plating. It was fast, and it was quiet, and it was the best ship humanity could spare for a mission that was, by every honest measure, a long shot. Elena Voss stood in the cargo bay 3 days before launch, watching engineers load supplies while Cale Threshy stood nearby, observing everything with the same calm patience it had shown since the moment it arrived. The two of them had spent many hours together in the days since the council's vote, and Elena had begun to understand the alien a little better, though understanding did not always mean trust. "You still haven't told me exactly where we are going," Elena said, checking a supply manifest without looking up. "A system number isn't a destination, it's barely a direction." "It is the most exact information I have," Cale said. "The Korath do not write down the locations of things they wish to forget. What I carry is memory, not maps." A conversation overheard between two engineers who believed no one else understood their dialect. A name whispered during a long repair shift, 12 years ago, when I was still young enough that no one thought to be careful around me. "And you're certain of the number?" "I am as certain as memory allows," Cale said, "which is to say, not perfectly, but closely enough to matter." Elena finally looked up at him. "That's not very reassuring." "No," Cale agreed, "but it is honest. I could tell you I am certain, and you might feel better for a day, until we arrive somewhere empty, and you learned the truth anyway. I would rather you know the shape of the risk now, while there is still time to prepare for it." She respected that, even if it did not make the coming weeks feel any less uncertain. She turned back to the manifest, marking off crates of emergency rations, spare parts, and weapons that Admiral Reyes had insisted on loading despite the ship's limited cargo space. "If the Korath figure out you're missing," she said, "won't they guess where you went?" "They will guess many things," Cale said. "Whether they guess correctly, and whether they act quickly enough to matter, I cannot say. I was careful when I left. I destroyed the records of my own movements before I departed. But the Korath are not fools, Commander. They have survived and conquered for many centuries because they are patient, and because they rarely underestimate an enemy for long." Elena nodded slowly. It was the kind of answer she had come to expect from him. Honest, careful, and never quite as comforting as she wanted it to be. The crew Elena assembled for the mission was small, 22 people in total, chosen for skill rather than rank. Diego Alvarez volunteered to serve as her second in command, insisting that after losing his brother to this war, he wanted to be part of whatever chance humanity had left to end it properly. Priya Nandan came as well, managing communications and the delicate task of working alongside Cale to translate whatever they might find. A gruff engineer named Tomas Rayner, no relation to the Admiral, oversaw the Meridian's overworked systems, muttering constantly about how the refit had been done in half the time it deserved. They launched on a gray morning, slipping out of Earth's defense perimeter through a gap in patrol schedules that had been arranged weeks in advance, timed carefully so that no Korath scout would notice a single ship leaving, while attention remained fixed on the growing fleet at the system's edge. Elena stood on the bridge as Earth shrank behind them on the view screen, a blue and green marble wrapped in thin clouds, still beautiful despite everything the war had done to it. "Feels strange, leaving now," Alvarez said quietly, standing beside her. "Running away while everyone else stays to fight." "We're not running away," Elena said. "We're trying to bring something back that might let them win. That's not the same thing." "Tell that to the people who don't know why we left," Alvarez said, though there was no real bitterness in his voice, only tiredness. The same tiredness that had settled over everyone in the fleet these last 3 years. The journey out to the edge of known space took 4 days, traveling through routes chosen to avoid Korath patrols, weaving past old mining outposts and abandoned colony markers left over from more hopeful decades. Elena spent much of that time with Cale, going over what fragments of memory he carried. trying to piece together a clearer picture of where the Threnai ship might be hidden. "Tell me about your people," Elena said, on the second night, sitting across from Kale in the small mess hall while most of the crew slept. Before the Korath came. Kale was quiet for a long moment, its large eyes reflecting the dim overhead lights. "We were proud," it said finally. "Perhaps too proud. We had colonized 11 worlds. We had fleets we believed were unbeatable. When the first Korath scouts arrived at our border, our leaders debated for months whether to negotiate or prepare for war, certain that any threat could be managed through strength or through words. By the time we understood how wrong we were, it was already too late." "What happened to your homeworld?" "It still exists," Kale said quietly. "The Korath do not destroy worlds they intend to use. They destroyed our fleets, our governments, our history, where it was convenient for them to erase it. But they kept our people, because conquered people make useful workers, useful soldiers, useful hands, to build the things the Dominion requires. My homeworld is still there, under a Korath flag, its children taught a history written by the species that broke it." Elena said nothing for a while, letting the weight of that sit between them. "Is that what you're afraid will happen to Earth?" "Yes," Kale said simply. "I have seen it happen before. I do not wish to see it happen again." On the fourth night, Priya intercepted a faint signal, garbled and distant, that made everyone on the bridge go very still. It was a Korath military frequency, encrypted in a pattern their systems had only partially cracked, but the fragments they could translate were enough to worry Elena badly. "They're talking about a defector," Priya said, reading from her screen, her voice tight. "A missing Severin technician. They've noticed he's gone." "How long ago?" Elena asked. "Hard to say exactly. The timestamp is corrupted, but based on relay delay, at least 6 days," Priya said. "They might already be searching." Elena looked at Kale, who had gone very still, its dark eyes fixed on the screen. "Would they connect your disappearance to Earth?" "Eventually," Kale said. "Perhaps they already have. I told you before, Commander. The Korath are patient and rarely foolish. If they suspect I came to you, they may begin searching the same records I used to find my information, hoping to reach the same conclusion before you do. Which means we might be racing them," Alvarez said grimly, "not just the war." "It is possible," Kale admitted. "I am sorry. I did not wish to bring more danger to this mission than it already carried." "It's not your fault the Korath are thorough," Elena said, though privately she felt the weight of the new pressure settle over her shoulders. Whatever time they thought they had just became less certain and less generous. They reached the outer edge of the numbered system 6 days after leaving Earth, dropping out of faster-than-light travel into a quiet stretch of space that looked, at first glance, almost entirely empty. A dim red star hung at the center of the system, casting weak light over a handful of cold, rocky planets, and a wide asteroid field that stretched across much of the outer system like a broken ring. "This is it," Kale said, studying the readouts with something that looked almost like relief. "This matches what I remember. The dead star, the broken ring of rock. This is the place." "Matches doesn't mean confirms," Elena said, though she felt a small, cautious flicker of hope all the same. "Where do we start looking?" "The asteroid field," Kale said. "If the Threnai hid something here, they would not have left it exposed on open space, or on the surface of a planet where scans might find it easily. They would have hidden it inside rock, inside debris, somewhere a casual search would overlook. It took 3 days of careful scanning to find anything at all. The asteroid field was vast, filled with thousands of rocky bodies of every size, and Rayner's scanning equipment, already strained from the ship's hurried refit, struggled to sort meaningful signals from the endless background noise of an ancient, empty system. Elena spent those 3 days sleeping in short bursts on the bridge, watching sensor sweeps pass without result, feeling the quiet pressure of a countdown she could not see but knew was there, somewhere behind them, in the growing Korath fleet gathering at Earth's doorstep. On the 4th day, Rayner found something. "Commander, you need to see this," he called out, his voice sharp with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. Elena crossed to his station quickly, and Kale followed close behind. On the screen was a large asteroid, unremarkable in shape, drifting quietly among thousands of others. But beneath its rocky surface, faint and steady, Rayner's scanners had detected something that did not belong there. A regular, artificial energy signature. Old and weak, but unmistakably not natural. That's not rock all the way through, Raynor said. There's something inside it. Something built. Kale leaned closer to the screen, its dark eyes wide, and for the first time since Elena had met him, its calm composure cracked slightly, replaced by something that looked almost like disbelief mixed with hope. It is real, Kale said quietly. After everything, it is actually real. Elena felt her own heart quicken, though she kept her voice steady, the way a commander learns to, even when hope threatens to overwhelm caution. Raynor, can you get us closer without triggering anything? If this thing has defenses left over from the Threnai, or if it's rigged some other way, I don't want to find out by losing the ship. I'll go slow, Raynor said. But Commander, whatever's in there, it's been sitting quiet for a very long time. If it still has power after all these centuries, that alone tells us something about how it was built. The Meridian moved carefully through the asteroid field, engines throttled to their lowest safe setting, drifting closer to the strange rock that Kale Threshy's whispered memory had led them to. On the bridge, no one spoke much, watching the asteroid grow larger on the view screen, its surface pitted and scarred by countless small impacts over what must have been hundreds of years. Elena stood at the front of the bridge, arms crossed, feeling the same mixture of fear and hope that had followed her since the night Kale's ship first appeared over Earth. She thought of the war room back home, of Reyes and Alvarez's brother, and the 61 ships standing against 200, of the countdown ticking quietly toward an assault that could end everything her species had ever built. She thought of the 6 days it had taken the Korath to notice a missing technician, and wondered how many more days remained before that noticing turned into pursuit. "Take us in," she said quietly. "Let's see what the Threnai left us." The Meridian settled into a slow orbit around the asteroid, close enough that Raynor could run a detailed scan of its surface. It took almost an hour before he found what he was looking for. A section of rock near the asteroid's northern pole that did not match the rest, smoother than natural stone should be, hidden under a thin layer of loose dust that had clearly been placed there on purpose, rather than gathered by chance over centuries of drifting through space. "There," Raynor said, highlighting the section on the main screen. "That's not rock, that's a door, or a hatch, or something built to look like rock from a distance. Whoever made this really did not want it found by accident." "Can we open it?" Elena asked. "Not from out here," Raynor said. "There's no obvious control system I can reach remotely. If there's a way in, it's probably built for someone standing right in front of it." Elena turned to Kale. "Do the Threnai use anything like a passcode? A gesture? A signal? Anything your fragments of memory might have mentioned?" Kale thought carefully before answering, its large eyes distant, as if searching through years of overheard conversation for something small enough to have been forgotten. "There was a phrase," it said slowly. "A single Severan engineer mentioned it once, many years ago, laughing quietly to another, about how the old dead species built doors that answered to feeling rather than to code. I did not understand what she meant at the time. I am not certain I understand it now." "Feeling rather than code," Elena repeated. "That's not much to go on." "No," Kale agreed, "but it may be all we have." They suited up in the Meridian's small landing craft, a stripped-down shuttle barely large enough for 6 people, and Elena chose her team carefully, herself, Alvarez, Raynor to handle any technical systems they found, Priya, in case translation was needed, and Kale, whose knowledge of the Threnai, thin as it was, remained their only guide. They crossed the short distance from the Meridian to the asteroid's surface in near silence, the vast quiet of the dead system pressing in around them, broken only by the soft hiss of their suits' air systems and the occasional crackle of Raynor checking his instruments. The hidden door, once they stood before it, looked almost disappointingly plain up close. A smooth, dark panel set into the rock, unmarked by any writing or symbol that Elena could see. Kale approached it slowly, placing one gloved hand against its surface, and for a long moment, nothing happened at all. "Maybe it needs a code after all," Alvarez said. "Maybe your engineer's story was just a story." "Wait," Kale said quietly. "Give it time." They waited. 30 seconds passed, then a full minute, the silence stretching uncomfortably long inside Elena's helmet, filled only with the sound of her own breathing. Then, faintly, a soft blue light began to trace along the edges of the panel, spreading slowly, like water finding the lowest path across a surface, until the whole door glowed with a dim, steady light that had clearly been dormant for a very long time. "It's reading something," Rayner said, checking his instruments with growing excitement. "Some kind of biological sensor, maybe. It's not looking for a code. I think it's looking for something alive." Slowly, with a groan of ancient machinery that had not moved in centuries, the door began to slide open, revealing a dark passage cut into the rock, leading downward into the asteroid's interior. Cold, stale air drifted out toward them, air that had been sealed inside for longer than any of them could easily imagine. "After you, Commander," Alvarez said, only half joking, gesturing toward the passage with his rifle. Elena stepped through first, her suit lights cutting twin beams into the darkness ahead. The passage walls were smooth, clearly carved by tools rather than by nature, marked here and there with faint patterns that might have been writing, might have been decoration, might have been something else entirely that no human eye had ever learned to read. They walked for what felt like a long time, though the readouts on Elena's suit told her it had only been a few minutes, the passage sloping gently downward, curving in ways that seemed designed to disguise its true depth from anyone who might have found the entrance without knowing what waited below. The dim patterns on the walls grew more frequent as they descended, until they resembled something closer to deliberate writing, long unbroken lines of unfamiliar symbols that Kale studied with quiet fascination. "Can you read any of it?" Priya asked. "No," Kale admitted. "The Threnai language was never taught to us. Even the Korath, who conquered and studied nearly everything they encountered, treated Threnai writing as a dead curiosity, rather than something worth preserving. I only know these symbols exist because I have seen fragments of them before, copied carelessly into old Korath archive files." The passage finally opened into a wide chamber, and every suit light in the group swept upward and outward at once, illuminating something vast and unmistakable resting in the darkness before them. It was a ship, enormous, easily 3 times the size of anything humanity had ever built, its hull dark and smooth, marked with the same faint patterns as the passage walls, sitting silent and still in a cradle of ancient machinery that had clearly been built specifically to hold it. No one spoke for a long moment. Even Alvarez, who rarely ran out of things to say, stood frozen, staring up at the shape looming above them in the dark. "That," Rayner said finally, his voice hushed, "is not a small ship." "No," Kale agreed quietly, its voice carrying something close to awe. "It is not." Elena felt her pulse quicken, hope and fear tangled together in a way she had not felt since the war began. She walked slowly toward the great hull, her suit lights sliding across its surface, searching for some sign of an entrance, a control panel, anything that might tell them how to reach inside. "Rayner, can your instruments tell us anything about its condition?" she asked. "Is it intact? Is there still power?" Rayner ran his scanner slowly along the hull, frowning at the readings that came back. "There's power. Faint but steady. Same as the door outside. Whatever kind of system runs this thing, it was built to last. I'm reading internal structure that looks whole. No obvious damage, though I can't tell you what half of these systems even are. This isn't built like anything in our databases, human or Korath." "It wouldn't be," Kale said quietly, still staring upward at the ship's vast shape. "The Threnai built this before either of our peoples existed as spacefaring civilizations. It has waited here longer than your species has had cities." Priya moved closer to the hull, running a gloved hand carefully along one of the faint carved patterns near its base. "There's something here," she said. "Not writing, I don't think. More like a shape, repeated, over and over. Almost like a signal, meant to be recognized rather than read." Elena crouched beside her, studying the pattern in the beam of her suit light. It was a simple shape, a circle inside a circle, repeated in a long, unbroken line along the base of the hull, worn faint in places where dust and time had settled over the centuries. "Whatever it means, it isn't hostile," Kale offered. "The Threnai were not a cruel people, from what little history survived them. If they built this ship as a gift, they would not have hidden traps within it, for whoever found it. They would have hidden only the ship itself, and left it waiting for someone willing to look hard enough, and want it badly enough, to find their way inside." "Let's hope you're right," Alvarez muttered, though there was no real doubt in his voice, only the caution of a soldier who had learned not to trust anything fully, until it proved itself. Elena straightened, looking up once more at the enormous silent shape resting above them, and felt, for the first time in 3 long years of war, something close to real hope settle quietly in her chest. Somewhere behind them, unseen, a Korath scout ship continued tracing the faint trail of an old signal across the quiet dark of space, patient and certain, closing the distance one careful step at a time, unaware that the humans it hunted had just found something far larger than a missing defector, something that might change the shape of the entire war, if only they could learn how to wake it before their enemies arrived. They found the entrance an hour later, on the underside of the great hull, a seam in the metal that opened the same way the outer door had, responding slowly to Kale's presence, rather than to any code or control panel. Cold, ancient air spilled out again, as the seam widened into a ramp, and Elena led her small team up into the dark belly of the ship, suit lights sweeping across corridors built on a scale that made every one of them feel small. The interior was quiet in a way that felt different from ordinary silence. It was not the silence of an empty room. It was the silence of something sleeping, something patient, something that had been waiting so long it had almost forgotten how to expect visitors at all. Faint lights flickered on along the corridor walls as they walked, responding to their presence, growing slightly brighter with each step, as if the ship itself were slowly waking from a very long dream. "This is not a warship," Kale said quietly, studying the wide, curved corridors around them. "Look at the shape of these halls. Warships are built narrow, defensible, easy to seal off in sections if part of the hull is breached. This is built open, generous. This is something else." "Then what is it?" Elena asked. "I do not know," Kale admitted. "Perhaps we will learn, if we go far enough." They walked for nearly 20 minutes before the corridor opened into a chamber unlike anything Elena had ever seen. It was enormous, easily large enough to hold the Meridian itself several times over, and at its center stood a raised platform surrounded by rings of dark, silent machinery. Faint blue light traced along the rings as the group entered, growing steadily brighter, until the whole chamber glowed with a soft, pulsing light that reminded Elena, oddly, of a heartbeat. "Raynor," Elena said quietly, "tell me this is good news." Raynor was already scanning furiously, his instruments beeping in ways Elena did not fully understand. "It's definitely core power," he said. "This whole ship has been running on some kind of long-cycle reactor, something built to last centuries without maintenance. I've never seen anything like it. If this is a fraction of what powers this ship, then whatever the rest of the systems are capable of, it isn't small." Kale moved slowly toward the raised platform at the chamber's center, its dark eyes wide with something between wonder and disbelief. As it stepped onto the platform, the rings of machinery around them pulsed brighter, and a low, resonant hum filled the chamber, rising slowly from somewhere deep within the ship's structure. "Something's happening," Alvarez said, raising his rifle instinctively, though there was nothing visible to aim at. "Wait," Kale said softly. "I do not think this is danger. I think this is greeting." A soft light bloomed above the platform, resolving slowly into a shape none of them expected. A simple, glowing figure, humanoid in outline but featureless, like a shadow made of soft blue light. It stood motionless for a long moment, and then, in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere in the chamber at once, it spoke. The words were not in any human language, nor in anything Kale recognized either, but as it spoke, Elena's translation earpiece crackled softly, working through layers of static and unfamiliar structure, slowly building something close to meaning. "Long, waiting. You are not Threnai," the voice said, halting and broken, as if the translation systems were struggling to bridge a gap of language and time, far greater than anything they had ever been designed to handle. "It's some kind of recording," Priya whispered. "Or an artificial intelligence. Something left behind to explain the ship, maybe, to whoever eventually found it." "Can you understand it?" Elena asked. "Barely," Priya said, working quickly at her translation device, adjusting settings with shaking hands. "Give me a moment. I think our systems are learning its structure as it speaks. The more it talks, the better we'll understand." The glowing figure spoke again, and this time, more of its words came through clearly. "I am the Warden, left behind by the Threnai people. To wait, and to watch, and to give this vessel to those who might one day need it. You are not Threnai, nor Korath. You are something new." "We are human," Elena said slowly. unsure if the figure could even understand her in return. "We come from a world called Earth. We are at war with the Korath Dominion. We were told this ship might be able to help us." There was a long pause, the glowing figure standing motionless, as if considering her words carefully, weighing them against centuries of patient waiting. "The Korath still hunt across these stars. Then, some things do not change, even across so long a sleep," it said finally. "Tell me of your war, human commander. Tell me why you have come so far, and risked so much, to find what my makers left behind." Elena spoke for a long time after that, telling the Warden of Earth's history, of first contact with the Korath, and the slow, grinding retreat that followed, of 61 ships standing against 200, of the countdown ticking toward a final assault that might end her species entirely. The glowing figure listened without interrupting, its featureless face somehow conveying attention, despite having no expression at all. When she finished, the Warden was quiet for a long moment. "My makers fought the Korath for nearly a century before our homeworld fell," it said finally. "We built this vessel in our final years, when we understood that we could not save ourselves, but hoped that our knowledge, our strength, might one day save another. We placed it here, hidden, waiting for a people brave enough, or desperate enough, to seek it out. You have found it, human commander. The question now is whether you are prepared for what it will ask of you in return." "What does it ask?" Elena said carefully. "This vessel is not merely a weapon," the Warden said. "It is knowledge, preserved across centuries, of technology far beyond what either your people or the Korath currently possess. Weapons capable of breaking fleets in single strikes. Shields capable of turning aside blows that would destroy lesser ships instantly. Engines capable of crossing distances your people would need months to travel in mere days. But this knowledge cannot simply be taken. It must be learned, understood, and earned, through trial, by those who would carry it forward. My makers did not wish for their gift to become another empire's shortcut to conquest. They wished it to become a test of character, given only to those willing to prove themselves worthy of carrying it." Alvarez shifted uneasily, lowering his rifle slightly. "A test? We don't exactly have time for tests. We've got maybe 6 weeks before the Korath reach Earth." "6 weeks is more time than my makers had, when their homeworld burned," the Warden said, and for the first time, something in its voice carried what might have been sorrow. "I do not offer this trial to delay you cruelly, soldier. I offer it because a weapon given without understanding becomes a danger to its wielder as much as to its enemy. My makers learned this lesson at great cost, in the final days of their own war, when weapons meant to save them were turned against them by their own carelessness. I will not allow that mistake to repeat itself, even now, even after so long a wait, even for a people as desperate as yours." Elena felt frustration rise in her chest, sharp and immediate, but she forced it down, remembering every hard lesson she had learned in 3 years of losing a war. Anger would not move this ancient guardian any faster, only patience and honesty might. "Then tell us what the trial requires," she said. "We don't have unlimited time, but we have enough to try. What must we prove?" The Warden's glowing shape shifted slightly, as if considering her words once more. "3 things," it said finally. "First, that your people possess the discipline to learn what this vessel offers, rather than simply seize it. Second, that your people possess the will to use its strength wisely, rather than let it consume you, as it nearly consumed my own makers in their final days. And third, that your people possess the courage to face what guards this vessel still, left behind by my makers, to ensure no unworthy hand would claim their gift lightly." "Guards," Alvarez repeated flatly. "There's something else down here?" "There is," the Warden confirmed. "A testing chamber, built deep within this vessel, holding constructs my makers left behind, capable of measuring the strength, the discipline, and the character of any who seek to claim what waits beyond it. Pass through that chamber, and this vessel, along with everything it carries, becomes yours to command. Fail, and the vessel will remain sealed, waiting, as it has waited already, for another people, another time, another chance." Elena looked back at her small team, at Alvarez's grim determination, at Rayner's cautious curiosity, at Priya's careful concentration as she continued fine-tuning her translation device, and at Kale, standing quietly to one side, its dark eyes fixed on the glowing figure with an expression that looked almost like hope, finally allowed to breathe after 400 years of waiting. How long will this trial take? She asked. That depends entirely on you, the warden said. Some who might have found this vessel, in ages long past, needed only days. Others, had they come unprepared in spirit, rather than only in strength, might have needed far longer, or might have failed entirely. I cannot promise you an easy path, human commander. I can only promise that the path exists, and that it has been walked before, by those who proved themselves capable of walking it. Elena thought of the Korath scout ship somewhere behind them, tracing their path across the dark, patient and certain, closing the distance one careful step at a time. She thought of Earth, of the 61 ships, and the growing fleet at the solar system's edge, of the 6 weeks that might already be shrinking toward 5, or 4, while they stood here debating trials and tests, in a chamber built by a people who had died defending their own homeworld far too long ago. We don't have the luxury of failing slowly, she said finally, but we also don't have the luxury of walking away from the only real chance we've found in 3 years of losing. Show us this testing chamber, Warden. We'll prove ourselves, or we'll die trying. Either way, we're not leaving without an answer. The glowing figure regarded her for a long moment, and something in its featureless face seemed, impossibly, to soften. Spoken like one of my own makers, in the days before their fall, it said quietly. Very well, human commander. Follow the light I will give you, and it will lead your people to the testing chamber. Choose carefully who accompanies you further. The trial ahead measures more than strength of arms. It measures the strength of what lies within you, and within those you bring beside you. A soft trail of blue light bloomed along the chamber floor, stretching away toward a wide archway on the chamber's far side, leading deeper still into the silent, ancient ship. Elena took a slow breath, feeling the weight of the decision ahead settle onto her shoulders, alongside every other weight she had carried these last 3 years. Alvarez, Kale, you're with me, she said finally. Priya, Raynor, stay here, and keep working on communication with the warden. If we run into trouble, I want someone able to talk our way through it, or call for help if we can't. Copy that, Commander, Raynor said. Though his voice carried a note of worry, he did not bother hiding. Elena turned toward the archway, toward the trail of soft blue light leading deeper into the dark, ancient heart of a ship, built by a people who had died defending their own future so that another species, one they would never meet, might one day have a chance to save its own. The three of them walked in silence at first, following the trail of light through corridors that grew narrower and darker the deeper they went, until at last, the light led them into a wide, circular chamber ringed with tall pillars, each carved with the same faint patterns they had seen throughout the ship. At the center of the chamber stood a single low pedestal, and above it, waiting, was a construct unlike anything Elena had ever seen, a tall, silent shape built of dark metal, humanoid in form, standing perfectly still, as if it had been waiting in that exact position for centuries. This is the first trial, Kale said quietly, reading something in the patterns along the nearest pillar, its understanding of the old symbols growing slightly clearer the longer it studied them. Discipline. It says here, roughly, that the first construct will not attack unless provoked. It will test whether we act with patience or with fear. So we just don't attack it? Alvarez asked, eyeing the still, silent shape warily. I believe so, Kale said, though I suspect it will not be as simple as standing still and waiting. They were right to be cautious. As they stepped further into the chamber, the construct's dark eyes lit with a faint red glow, and it began to move, slowly at first, circling them with a smooth, deliberate gait that felt less like a machine and more like a predator sizing up its prey. It raised no weapon, it made no sound, but every instinct in Elena's body screamed at her to raise her own weapon in response, to meet its slow, circling threat with force before it could strike first. She kept her hands steady at her sides. Commander, Alvarez said tightly, his own hand hovering near his rifle. It's getting closer. Don't, Elena said quietly. Not yet. Watch it. It hasn't attacked. It's testing us, not hunting us. The construct circled closer still, until it stood directly in front of Elena, its faint red eyes fixed on hers, close enough that she could have reached out and touched it if she chose. Every muscle in her body tensed, every year of soldier's instinct urging her to strike first, to protect herself the way she had been trained to since she was 19 years old. But she thought of Kale's words, of a weapon given without understanding, becoming a danger to its wielder, and she forced herself to remain still, meeting the construct's gaze without flinching, and without reaching for her weapon. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the construct's red eyes dimmed, and it stepped back, lowering its stance in what looked, unmistakably, like a gesture of respect. The pillars around the chamber glowed faintly brighter, and Kale let out a breath none of them realized it had been holding. "I believe we passed," Kale said. "Discipline, proven through patience rather than force." "That was not fun," Alvarez muttered, finally lowering his hand from his rifle. "Remind me never to do that again." They moved on, following a new trail of light that led them into a second chamber, smaller than the first, empty, except for a single wide screen built into the far wall, glowing softly with shifting light. As they approached, the screen resolved into an image, a small, distant view of Earth's solar system, the growing Korath fleet marked in dim red at its edge, and beside it, a second image, showing a peaceful, unfamiliar world, green and quiet, untouched by war. "This is the second trial," Kale said slowly, studying the patterns carved into the wall beside the screen. "Will, it offers a choice, Commander. It says the strength within this ship could be used to save one world, and one world only, in its earliest years of use, before its full power can be safely unlocked. It asks which one we would choose." "That's not a fair question," Alvarez said sharply. "We're not choosing between two worlds. We came here for Earth." "I do not think it is truly asking us to choose between two real worlds," Kale said carefully. "I believe it is asking whether we would choose the world we already love, out of loyalty and fear, or whether we would choose wisely, based on true need, even if the answer were not the one we wish to give. It is testing whether ambition and desperation might one day cause us to misuse the power we seek, choosing what serves us, rather than what serves what is right." Elena studied the two images for a long moment, feeling the pull of home, sharp and immediate, in the image of Earth surrounded by red markers. But she made herself think it through carefully, the way Kale's words demanded. "The unfamiliar world," she said finally. "If it were truly a choice between two real worlds, and Earth were not one of them, I would choose based on which faced the greater danger, not based on which one I loved. That's the honest answer, even if I don't like it." The screen flickered, and words appeared across it, translated slowly by Priya's earlier calibrations, faint and grainy, but readable, spoken by the warden's distant voice through some part of the ship's systems that reached even this far. "An answer given honestly, even against the heart's own wish, is worth more than any answer given for comfort alone," the words read. "You have proven will enough to continue." The final chamber waited at the end of a long, curving corridor, and when they entered it, Elena understood immediately why it had been saved for last. It was vast, easily the largest space they had yet encountered within the ship, its ceiling lost somewhere in shadow far above, and at its center stood not one construct, but three, each larger and more heavily built than the one from the first trial, their red eyes already glowing as the group entered. "Courage," Kale said quietly, its voice tight. "This is the final trial. I believe these constructs are not meant to be reasoned with, Commander. I believe this one asks something more difficult than patience or honesty." "How difficult?" Alvarez asked, already raising his rifle. Before Kale could answer, the three constructs moved at once, fast and coordinated, closing the distance across the chamber floor, with a speed that left no time for further discussion. Elena barely had time to shout a warning, before the first blow came, a heavy metal fist swinging toward Alvarez's head, forcing him to duck and roll aside just in time. "Fight back," Elena shouted, drawing her own weapon at last, understanding now that this final trial demanded not patience, but the willingness to stand and face danger head-on, without flinching, without retreating, no matter how outmatched they might feel. "This one wants to see if we'll run, or if we'll stand." The fight that followed was brutal and fast. Three tired travelers against three ancient constructs built to test the very limits of courage itself. Alvarez fired again and again, his shots sparking harmlessly off thick metal plating, while Elena ducked and weaved, searching desperately for any weakness in the construct's design. Kale, unarmed but quick, threw itself between Elena and a descending blow, taking the hit across its shoulder with a pained cry, buying her the half-second she needed to find her footing again. They're not trying to kill us, Elena realized suddenly, watching the pattern of the attacks more carefully, even as she dodged another swinging blow. Look at the strikes. They're testing our nerve, not ending our lives. They pull back just enough each time. That is a very fine distinction to trust your life to, Commander, Kale said tightly, clutching its injured shoulder. Maybe, Elena said. But it's the only theory we've got, and we're not winning this fight by strength alone. She straightened, lowering her weapon slightly, despite every instinct screaming against it, and stepped forward to meet the nearest construct directly, refusing to retreat, as its heavy fist swung toward her one final time. The blow stopped less than an inch from her face, the construct's arm frozen in place, its red eyes dimming slowly to nothing. One by one, the other two constructs froze as well, their attacks halting mid-motion, until all three stood motionless once more, exactly as they had been when the group first entered the chamber. The warden's voice returned, filling the vast chamber softly from everywhere at once. Discipline proven through patience, will proven through honesty, and now, courage proven through the choice to stand rather than flee, even when victory seemed uncertain. You have passed the trials left by my makers, human commander. This vessel, and everything it carries, is yours to command. Elena let out a long, shaking breath, lowering her weapon fully at last, feeling Alvarez slump slightly beside her in exhausted relief, and watching Kale straighten slowly, its injured shoulder already being tended by whatever passed for medical instinct among the Severin. Behind her, unseen, far across the quiet dark of the system, the Korath scout ship continued closing the distance, patient and certain, unaware that the fate of an entire war had just been decided, not by fleets or weapons, but by three tired travelers, who had chosen, in their final and most difficult trial, to stand their ground rather than run. The ship's name, when the warden finally shared it, was not a word so much as a feeling, translated as closely as human language allowed into something like Dawnbringer, a name the Threnai had given it in their final days, hoping it would one day carry that meaning forward, to whoever proved worthy of claiming it. Elena stood back in the great central chamber, watching the rings of ancient machinery pulse steadily brighter, and felt the weight of the last 3 years pressing strangely against a new and unfamiliar feeling. Real, cautious hope. So it's ours now, Alvarez said, still favoring the arm he had bruised badly during the third trial, though nothing had broken. The whole ship, just like that. Not quite just like that, Kale said, its own shoulder wrapped tightly by Priya's careful field dressing. Ownership without understanding is still dangerous, Commander. The warden warned us of this itself. We must learn to use what we have claimed, not merely claim it. How long will that take? Elena asked, turning to the glowing figure that still stood patiently atop the central platform. That depends on how much you wish to learn, and how quickly your people can adapt to knowledge built on principles your engineers have never encountered, the warden said. I can teach the core systems within days. Weapons, shielding, propulsion, all of it can be explained and demonstrated swiftly enough for basic operation. Mastery, true mastery, would take years. But you do not have years, human commander. You have weeks, by your own account. I will teach you what can be taught quickly, and trust that skilled hands will learn the rest through use, as all technology is truly learned in the end. Raynor, still slightly in awe of the ship's scale, was already moving toward one of the chamber's side panels, his scanning equipment beeping steadily as he studied readouts that made less and less sense to him the longer he looked. Commander, if even half of what I'm seeing here is real, this ship alone might be worth more than our entire remaining fleet combined. The power output, the shielding capacity, it's not close to anything we've built. It's not even close to anything the Korath have built, as far as our intelligence reports go. Then let's not waste the advantage standing here admiring it, Elena said, though she allowed herself a small, tired smile, the first genuine one she had felt in longer than she cared to admit. Warden, we need to move quickly. Teach us what you can, starting now. Priya, get a message ready for the Meridian. I want Reyes to know what we've found, the moment we can safely transmit it. The next 4 days passed in a blur of learning unlike anything Elena had experienced in her 19 years of military service. The warden proved a patient teacher, walking them through the Dawnbringer's systems one careful layer at a time, translating complex Threnai engineering principles into concepts human minds could grasp, even if only partially. Raynor absorbed the propulsion and power systems with a hunger that reminded Elena of a much younger man discovering his calling for the first time, muttering excitedly to himself about efficiency ratios and energy transfer methods that, as far as he could tell, should not have been physically possible with technology this old. The weapon systems were the hardest to fully grasp, built around principles of focused energy that bore little resemblance to anything humanity's own physicists had theorized. But even a partial understanding revealed enough to make Alvarez go quiet with something between awe and unease. "This one weapon," he said, on the third day, staring at a schematic the warden had projected before them, "could probably have ended the Battle of Ceres in about 10 seconds. My brother died over 3 days of fighting that the Korath barely noticed losing ships in. 10 seconds, and this weapon could have flattened their entire strike force. Then let us make certain such losses do not repeat themselves," Kale said quietly, standing beside him. On the 5th day, disaster arrived in the form of a warning from Priya, her voice tight with alarm, as she called Elena to the Meridian's bridge, where the small ship remained docked against the asteroid's surface, waiting, while the away team worked deep within the Dawnbringer. "Commander, we've got a contact," Priya said, pointing at her screen. "Small, fast, matches the profile of a Korath scout ship. It's been closing on our position for the last 2 days. Slow and careful, like it's been following something rather than searching randomly." Elena felt her stomach tighten. "The signal you intercepted before we found this system, the one about Kale's disappearance." "Has to be," Priya said. "They found the trail eventually. I don't think they know exactly what's here yet, but they're getting close enough that it won't matter much longer." "How long until it reaches us?" "At current speed, maybe 6 hours," Priya said, "assuming it doesn't speed up once it gets solid readings on this asteroid field." Elena called the away team back together immediately, gathering in the Dawnbringer's central chamber, where the warden's glowing form still waited patiently. "We have a Korath scout ship inbound," she said without preamble. 6 hours, maybe less. We need this ship combat capable before it arrives, or we need a plan for what happens if it isn't. 6 hours is little time, even for a vessel such as this," the warden said. "But the Dawnbringer's core systems were never truly dormant, human commander. Power, shielding, basic weapons, these can be brought fully online far faster than the deeper knowledge I hope to share with you across a more patient timeline. What you would lose is subtlety and skill in their use. What you would gain is enough strength to survive a single scout ship's arrival, if that is what you require most urgently." "That's exactly what I require," Elena said. "Bring it online, now." The Dawnbringer shuddered gently around them as the warden's systems began working in earnest. Ancient machinery humming to life throughout the enormous vessel, lights brightening steadily, in corridor after corridor, as centuries of dormancy gave way, at last, to genuine wakefulness. Elena felt the change beneath her feet, a subtle vibration that spoke of vast engines stirring after a very long sleep, and she allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction, imagining the look on a Korath captain's face upon realizing what waited for them at the edge of this quiet, forgotten system. Raynor worked frantically alongside 2 of the Meridian's junior engineers, ferried over quickly once the danger became clear, all of them scrambling to understand enough of the Dawnbringer's controls to bring its weapons and shields to readiness before the scout ship's arrival. Alvarez organized what defense he could from the Meridian itself, positioning the smaller ship to support the Dawnbringer's awakening, rather than risk it alone against a hostile scout. 4 hours, Priya reported, her voice tight, as Elena returned to the Meridian's bridge to oversee preparations from a position where she could watch both ships at once. "It's definitely coming this way, Commander, and it's transmitting something. Encrypted, but the pattern looks like a status report, probably heading back toward the main Korath fleet. They're calling for backup before they even confirm what they've found," Elena said grimly. "That means if we don't stop this scout here, we won't just have one ship to worry about. We'll have every Korath vessel that received that transmission, coming to see what's worth investigating." "Can we jam it?" Alvarez asked. "Maybe," Priya said, already working at her console. "If I can get a read on their transmission frequency in time. But Commander, even if I jam this one, there's a chance they've already sent enough of a burst for the main fleet to catch a fragment of it. We might already be too late to keep this fully quiet." Elena closed her eyes briefly, weighing the risk against the reality that time had already run out for careful, quiet solutions. Do what you can to slow them down, she said. But Priya, I think we need to accept that this might not stay secret much longer. If that's true, our best move isn't hiding. It's making sure the Dawnbringer is ready to fight, and ready to fight soon, because if the Korath main fleet learns what's out here, they won't send one scout ship next time. They'll send everything they have to make sure it never reaches Earth. 2 hours later, the Korath scout ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the asteroid field. Small and sleek and unmistakably hostile, its sensors immediately sweeping the debris field in search of whatever had drawn its long, patient pursuit across so much empty space. Aboard the Meridian, every crew member held their breath, watching the newly awakened Dawnbringer systems flicker with readiness that was still, by the Warden's own admission, far from complete. "Commander, it's found the entrance," Raynor reported, watching sensor readings with a tight jaw. "It's slowing down. I think it's seen the asteroid's anomaly. It knows something's here." "Then we don't wait for it to confirm what," Elena said, feeling the weight of the decision settle heavily onto her shoulders. "Warden, can the Dawnbringer's weapons fire yet?" "Basic weapons are online. Human Commander," the Warden's voice came through the ship's newly restored communication systems. "I would not call them refined, nor would I call our shields at their fullest strength. But they will serve, if you choose to use them now, rather than wait for an enemy already at our door." Elena looked at the tactical display, at the small Korath scout ship drifting cautiously closer to the hidden entrance in the asteroid's surface, its sensors surely already gathering data that would, within minutes, confirm to its distant commanders that something extraordinary waited in this forgotten corner of space. She thought of Earth, of the 61 ships and the growing Korath fleet at the solar system's edge, of every soldier who had died in 3 years of losing ground, one system at a time. "Fire," she said quietly, before they finished confirming what they've found. The Dawnbringer's weapons activated for the first time in centuries, a brilliant lance of focused energy lancing out from ports along its enormous hull, faster and brighter than anything Elena had ever seen a human weapon produce. The beam struck the Korath scout ship squarely across its midsection, and for a single stunned moment, nothing seemed to happen at all, as if the small vessel had simply absorbed the blow without consequence. Then it broke apart entirely, its hull splitting along the exact line the beam had struck, debris scattering silently outward into the dark. No explosion, no dramatic flash, just sudden and total destruction, delivered with a precision that left everyone on the Meridian's bridge staring at their screens in stunned silence. "That," Raynor said finally, his voice barely above a whisper, "is one hell of a weapon." "It's also one hell of a warning," Elena said quietly, watching the debris field drift apart on her screen. "If that scout got even a partial transmission out before we destroyed it, the Korath fleet already knows something happened out here. We just bought ourselves a little more time, and maybe a much bigger fight, all in the same breath." Kale, standing quietly nearby, looked out at the destroyed scout ship's remains, with an expression Elena could not quite read, something caught between grim satisfaction and lingering unease. "It is done, Commander," it said finally. "The Korath will come looking now, whether from that ship's final transmission, or eventually, when this scout fails to report back at all. Either way, the quiet part of our mission is finished. What remains is whether the Dawnbringer, and all of you, are ready for what comes next." Elena turned back to the tactical display, watching the empty space where a Korath scout ship had drifted only minutes before, and felt the countdown she had been carrying since the war room back on Earth grow suddenly, sharply shorter. "Priya, get me a full report on that transmission," she said. "I need to know exactly how much they might have learned before we stop them." Priya worked quickly, running the intercepted fragments through every analysis tool the Meridian carried. After several tense minutes, she looked up, her expression grim, but not hopeless. "It's partial, Commander. They got out a burst before the weapon hit, but from what I can tell, it was mostly just a location and a status flag, nothing detailed about what they actually found. No images, no scan data, nothing that would tell the main fleet exactly what waits out here. Just enough to make them curious, not enough to make them certain." "That buys us something at least," Elena said. "Curiosity moves slower than certainty. Raynor, How long until the Dawnbringer is combat ready? Truly ready. Not just enough to destroy one unprepared scout ship. Rayner rubbed his eyes, exhaustion plain on his face after days of near constant work. Warden already walked us through the basics faster than I thought possible. But full readiness, full understanding of every system aboard this thing, that's still going to take time, we might not have. Give me 2 more days, and I can get shields at their real strength, and weapons calibrated properly, instead of just firing blind like we did with that scout. Give me a week, and I could probably get propulsion optimized enough to actually move this thing at a useful speed. We don't have a week, Elena said. We might not even have 2 days, if that scout status flag draws attention faster than we hope. Warden, how quickly can the Dawnbringer travel back toward Earth, even without full optimization? The Dawnbringer's engines, even unrefined by careful hands, exceed anything your people currently possess. The Warden said, I estimate a journey to your solar system requiring perhaps 3 days at safe speeds. Less if you are willing to accept greater strain on systems not yet fully calibrated. I would advise caution, Human Commander. A ship pushed too hard, too soon, risks failure at the worst possible moment. Elena weighed the risk carefully, thinking of the 6 to 8 weeks Reyes had originally estimated before the Korath's final assault. Weeks that had already been shrinking steadily since the day Kale's small ship first arrived over Earth. We'll take the safer speed for now, she decided. 3 days to reach Earth, plus whatever time Rayner needs to bring the weapons and shields fully online during the journey itself. That still gives us time to prepare properly, without risking the ship falling apart before it even reaches the fight that matters most. And if the main Korath fleet decides to investigate that scout's last transmission before we're gone? Alvarez asked. Then we'll have already tested these weapons once, Elena said grimly. And we'll test them again if we have to. But I'd rather leave this system quietly than announce ourselves to a fleet of 200 warships before we're ready to face them properly. They spent the next several hours preparing for departure, ferrying the last of the Meridian's crew and supplies aboard the Dawnbringer's vast, echoing halls, while Rayner and his small team worked feverishly to bring as many systems online as the ship's ancient architecture would allow. Kale moved through the process with quiet efficiency, translating what fragments of understanding it could gather from the Warden into terms the human engineers could use, its injured shoulder healing steadily under Priya's careful attention. Elena spent part of that time composing a message to send back to Earth, recording it carefully aboard the Meridian's long-range transmitter, knowing it would take days to arrive even at the speed of the fastest relay signals humanity possessed. She kept her words simple, describing the Dawnbringer's discovery, its trials, its weapons, and the danger that now followed close behind them, ending with words she hoped Reyes and the Council would carry forward with them, into whatever decisions came next. We found what we were looking for, she said into the recorder, her voice steady, despite the exhaustion pulling at every part of her. It's real. And it's more than we hoped for. But we've been seen, and the Korath will come looking, sooner rather than later. We're bringing it home, as fast as we safely can. Hold the line until we arrive. We haven't come this far to lose everything in the final weeks. The message was sent, disappearing into the dark, toward a homeworld that felt, for the first time in Elena's memory, close enough to imagine reaching before it was too late. 3 hours later, with the last of the Meridian's crew safely aboard and Rayner's team reporting shields and weapons at what he cautiously called usable, if not perfect, the enormous shape of the Dawnbringer began, slowly and carefully, to move. It rose from the asteroid's shattered surface, like something ancient finally remembering how to breathe, engines humming with a deep, steady power that Elena felt through the deck plating beneath her boots, a vibration unlike anything her own fleet's ships had ever produced. Behind it, the small Meridian followed close, dwarfed entirely by the vessel it now escorted, and together, the two ships turned toward the dark expanse of space that separated this forgotten system from the solar system humanity still called home. Far behind them, unseen but never fully forgotten, a partial transmission continued its slow journey across the stars, carrying fragments of curiosity toward a fleet of 200 Korath warships that would, within days, begin asking questions about a missing scout ship and a strange energy signature detected at the edge of known space. Elena stood on the Dawnbringer's bridge, newly claimed and still unfamiliar beneath her hands, and watched the stars stretch slowly into streaks of light as the ancient ship carried them all home, faster than any human vessel had ever traveled, toward a war that was waiting, patiently, for its ending. Far away, aboard the lead warship of the gathered Korath fleet, a commander known among its own kind as Vorak Sel received the fragment of the scout's final transmission, with the same patient calm it applied to every piece of information that crossed its desk. Vorak was old, by Korath standards, having led fleets through 3 separate conquests before this one, and it had learned long ago that patience, more than any weapon, was the true foundation of the Dominion's long and unbroken record of victory. It studied the fragment carefully, a location marker, a status flag indicating unusual energy readings, and then silence, the scout's signal cut off mid-transmission, in a manner that suggested destruction rather than mere technical failure. Vorak considered this for a long moment, weighing the value of investigation against the far larger priority, already consuming the fleet's attention, the final preparations for Earth's long-awaited conquest. "Send a message to Fleet Command," Vorak said finally, addressing a junior officer standing nearby. "Note the missing scout and its last transmission. Request a small detachment be dispatched to investigate, once resources allow. It is likely nothing more than an unstable asteroid field, or perhaps pirates too foolish to know better than to attack a Dominion vessel. But we did not conquer as many worlds as we have, by ignoring loose threads, however small they may seem." "And the main assault on the human homeworld?" the officer asked. "Should it be delayed until the detachment reports back?" Vorak considered this briefly, then dismissed the thought with the same patient certainty that had guided its decisions for centuries. "No, the humans are already beaten, whether they understand it yet or not. 61 ships cannot stand against 200, and no missing scout ship changes that arithmetic. Proceed with preparations as planned. We finish this war within the month, loose threads or not." The order was given, and across the gathered fleet, preparations for Earth's final assault continued exactly as scheduled, undisturbed by the quiet mystery of a single missing scout ship, dismissed as a small and unimportant detail by a commander who had learned, across centuries of unbroken victory, to trust in numbers over caution. It was, though Vorak Sel could not yet know it, the first mistake the Korath Dominion had made in this war that would truly matter, and by the time it understood its error, there would be no patience left in the galaxy capable of undoing it. The Dawnbringer arrived at the edge of the solar system on a gray morning, though morning and gray meant little anymore to anyone watching from Earth's surface, where the sky had carried the color of ash for 3 long years. Admiral Reyes stood in the war room, staring at a sensor reading that his own officers had checked 3 times before daring to report it to him. An enormous, unknown vessel dropping out of faster-than-light travel, just beyond the orbit of Mars, escorted by a small, battered ship that his systems identified, with a flood of relief so sharp it was almost painful, as the Meridian. "Get me a channel," Reyes said, his voice tight with an emotion he had not allowed himself to feel in longer than he could remember. "Now." The connection opened moments later, and Elena's face appeared on the main screen, tired but steady, standing on a bridge unlike anything Reyes had ever seen, vast and strange and glowing with soft light that did not belong to any human ship design. "Admiral," Elena said, "we found it. It's real, and it's more than we hoped for. But we need to talk fast, because I don't think we have much time before the Korath figure out exactly what happened out there." Reyes listened as Elena explained everything, the trials, the warden, the weapon that had destroyed a Korath scout ship in a single blow, and the partial transmission that might already have reached the ears of the gathered enemy fleet. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment, staring at the star map on the wall, at the red markers that had grown steadily more numerous in the days since her departure. "The Korath fleet has grown again," Reyes said finally. "Our scouts estimate 230 capital ships now, gathered at the edge of the system. Our intelligence suggests the final assault could begin within days, not weeks. Whatever time we thought we had, Commander, I think we're nearly out of it." "Then it's a good thing we didn't waste the time we had," Elena said. "Admiral, this ship, the Dawnbringer, it isn't like anything we've built, or anything the Korath have built either, as far as I can tell. If we can get it into position before the assault begins, I believe it can change the outcome of this fight." "One ship against 230? Reyes asked, though there was something in his voice that sounded less like doubt and more like a man daring to hope against everything 3 years of war had taught him. One ship, and everything we still have left, Elena said. 61 warships. Whatever pilots and soldiers remain willing to fly one more mission. It won't be an easy fight, Admiral. But I don't think it's a fight we're guaranteed to lose anymore either. Reyes closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them again, something in his tired face had shifted. The same shift Elena had seen in him the night she first proposed this mission. The look of a man remembering, after years of losing, what it felt like to believe in a chance instead of merely enduring a defeat. "Bring it in," he said. "I'll gather what's left of the fleet. We'll meet the Korath together, Commander. All of it, everything we have, in one final stand. If this ship is what you say it is, then let's make certain the Dominion remembers this day for a very long time." The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation, unlike anything Earth's defense forces had attempted in the entire war. Rayner's team, augmented now by dozens of human engineers ferried up from Earth's remaining shipyards, worked around the clock to bring the Dawnbringer's systems fully online, guided every step of the way by the Warden's patient instruction. Weapons were calibrated, shields refined, and slowly, carefully, the ancient vessel began to feel less like a mystery and more like a weapon, truly ready for war. Kale spent much of that time working alongside Priya and the Warden, translating what remained of the ship's deeper systems, growing quieter as the day of battle approached, its dark eyes carrying a weight that Elena recognized easily, the particular fear of someone who had spent 400 years hoping for a chance like this, only to now stand at the edge of discovering whether that hope had truly been worth the risk. "You don't have to be on the bridge for this," Elena told him, the night before the fleet moved into position. "You've done more than anyone could have asked already. No one would think less of you for staying somewhere safer." "I did not come this far to hide when the moment finally arrived," Kale said quietly. "I told you once, Commander, that I wanted to see the Korath lose, somewhere, to someone, after 400 years of watching them win. I intend to see it with my own eyes, whatever the cost of staying to witness it." Elena nodded, understanding that feeling better than she could easily put into words, and left him to his preparations, returning to her own, aware that whatever happened in the coming battle, it would decide far more than the outcome of a single fight. The Korath fleet began its final assault on Earth on the morning of the third day, exactly as Reyes's intelligence had predicted. 230 capital ships moving in slow, disciplined formation across the outer edge of the solar system, confident in numbers that had crushed every resistance they had faced since first arriving at humanity's border. Voraxel commanded from the lead warship, patient and certain as always, watching Earth's remaining 61 ships gather in a defensive line that looked, by any honest measure, hopelessly outmatched. What Vorak did not expect, as the Korath fleet crossed the final distance toward Earth's defensive perimeter, was the enormous, unfamiliar shape that rose slowly from behind the human line, dwarfing every ship around it, its hull marked with patterns unlike anything Korath intelligence had ever catalogued. "Report," Reporak said sharply, the first hint of genuine surprise entering its voice in longer than its officers could remember. "Unknown vessel, sir," came the reply. "Energy signature matches nothing in our database. It appeared from behind the human defensive line only moments ago." Vorak studied the strange shape on its own tactical display, and for the first time in this long war, felt something it had not felt since its earliest campaigns, centuries ago: uncertainty. "Hold formation," it ordered finally. "Whatever this vessel is, our numbers remain overwhelming. Proceed with the assault as planned." The battle began moments later, and for the first minutes, it unfolded exactly as every previous battle in this war had unfolded. Korath warships, advancing in disciplined formation. Human ships maneuvering desperately to hold their line. Weapons fire lighting the black of space in bright, deadly streaks. But as the fleets closed the final distance, the Dawnbringer opened fire for the first time in true combat, and everything changed. Its weapons cut through Korath shields as though they were nothing at all, lancing out in brilliant streaks that shattered entire ships in single strikes, exactly as it had destroyed the lone scout ship days earlier. Except now, instead of one small vessel, it faced an entire fleet, and it did not slow, and it did not stop. Elena stood on its bridge, watching the battle unfold on screens surrounding her, feeling the ancient ship respond to her commands with a precision that still felt, even now, faintly unbelievable. "Warden, status on our shields?" she called out, as a wave of Korath fire washed harmlessly across the Dawnbringer's hull, absorbed by defenses far beyond anything human engineering had ever produced. Holding at full strength, human commander, the warden's voice replied calmly. My makers built well, even in their final desperate days. This vessel was designed to withstand far greater assault than what these Korath ships currently offer. Around the Dawnbringer, Earth's remaining 61 ships fought with a ferocity Elena had not seen in years, emboldened by the enormous vessel fighting alongside them, striking at Korath ships already reeling from the Dawnbringer's devastating opening volleys. Alvarez, commanding a smaller strike group from the Meridian, guided his ships through gaps in the Korath formation, created by the Dawnbringer's relentless fire, picking off damaged vessels with practiced precision. Vorak Sel watched its fleet's careful formation crumble with a growing, unfamiliar dread, as ship after ship reported catastrophic damage from a single enemy vessel that should not, by any measure the Korath understood, have existed. Concentrate all fire on the large vessel, it ordered, its patient calm finally beginning to fracture. Whatever it is, it must have a weakness. Find it. The Korath fleet turned its focused fire toward the Dawnbringer, dozens of ships unleashing everything they had at once, and for a tense, terrible moment, Elena felt the ancient ship shudder beneath her, its shields straining under the combined assault of an entire battle fleet, concentrating everything on a single target. Warden, she called out sharply. Shields at 70%, and holding. Human commander, the warden replied, its voice as calm as ever, despite the visible strain now flickering across several of the bridge's readouts. This is more sustained assault than my makers anticipated any single enemy fleet delivering, but the Dawnbringer was built to endure far worse in its final trials. We will hold. Elena gritted her teeth, watching the battle unfold, with a mixture of fear and fierce, desperate hope. Then let's give them something worse to worry about. Target their command ship. If Kale's right about how the Korath fight, breaking their leadership might break their formation faster than picking off ships one at a time. The Dawnbringer's weapons turned toward Vorak Sel's flagship, and the beam that followed struck with a precision that left no room for doubt about its target. Vorak's shields held for a fraction of a second longer than the scout ships had, but only a fraction, before the beam tore through them entirely, striking the flagship's hull in a blow that sent the massive vessel spinning out of formation, trailing fire and debris into the dark. Whatever discipline had held the Korath fleet together through 3 years of unbroken victory shattered in that single moment, ships breaking formation in confusion as their command structure collapsed, some retreating instinctively, others pressing forward without coordination, easy targets now for a defending human fleet that had, for the first time in this long war, found something to fight for, beyond mere survival. Priya worked steadily at the communications station throughout the fight, relaying targeting data between the Dawnbringer and the rest of the human fleet, her voice calm, even as the ship shuddered around her under the weight of enemy fire. Commander, Alvarez's group is requesting cover. They've pushed too far into the Korath formation, and they're taking heavy fire from 3 ships converging on their position. Warden, can we redirect a secondary weapons bank toward those coordinates? Elena asked quickly, watching the tactical display where Alvarez's small strike group blinked in warning red, surrounded on 3 sides. Redirecting now, human commander, the warden replied, and moments later, a second beam of focused energy lanced out from the Dawnbringer's flank, catching one of the 3 converging Korath ships squarely, and sending it tumbling out of the fight, its hull venting atmosphere in a bright, silent cloud. That's one, Alvarez called over the comm, his voice tight with adrenaline. 2 more on us, Commander. We could use a little more of that. Raynor, status on the second weapons bank? Elena asked. Recharging, Raynor reported, sweat visible on his brow, even through the strain in his voice. This ship's incredible, Commander, but even it needs a few seconds between full power strikes. Give it 30 more seconds. 30 seconds, in the middle of a battle involving hundreds of ships, felt like an eternity, and Elena watched the display with her jaw clenched tight, willing Alvarez's small group to hold on. They did, barely, weaving and dodging with skill born of years fighting a losing war, until the Dawnbringer's second weapon finally recharged and struck the remaining 2 Korath ships in quick succession, clearing the threat entirely. Thank you, Commander, Alvarez said, audible relief flooding his voice. Remind me to buy this ship a drink when this is over. It was in the chaos of moments like these, small victories and near disasters unfolding across an enormous battlefield, that the Korath formation began, slowly, to fracture under pressure it had never faced before. The battle raged for nearly 6 hours, but its outcome, though hard-fought and costly, had been decided the moment Voraxel's flagship fell from formation. By the time the last scattered Korath ships retreated from the system, fleeing back toward whatever remained of their broken command structure, Earth's defense forces had lost 14 ships, a devastating cost by any measure, but nothing compared to what the Korath had lost that day. Nearly 180 capital ships destroyed or crippled beyond repair, the largest single defeat the Dominion had suffered in centuries of unbroken conquest. Elena stood on the Dawnbringer's bridge as the last Korath ships vanished from her screens, feeling an exhaustion so deep it settled into her bones, mixed with something she had almost forgotten how to feel across 3 long years of war. Relief, sharp and real and entirely earned. "It's over," Alvarez said quietly, his voice crackling over the comm from the Meridian, still positioned nearby, amid the wreckage of a battle that would be remembered, Elena suspected, for as long as humanity survived to remember anything at all. "Commander, I don't think I actually believed we'd win, until just now." "Neither did I," Elena admitted. "Not fully. Not until Vorak's ship went down and their whole formation fell apart." Kale stood quietly beside her on the bridge, its dark eyes fixed on the drifting wreckage still visible on the main screen, the scattered remains of a fleet that had, only hours earlier, seemed utterly unstoppable. 400 years, it said softly, almost to itself. 400 years of watching them win, and today, finally, I watched them lose. "It's not over yet," Elena said gently, understanding the weight behind those words better than perhaps anyone else aboard could. "This was one battle, one fleet. The Korath Dominion is far larger than what we face today. They'll come back, eventually, with more ships, more anger, more determination, to finish what they started here. Perhaps," Kale said, "but they will come back knowing, for the first time in centuries, that they can be beaten. That alone is worth more than I can easily express, Commander. Fear breaks patience faster than any weapon. The Dominion has built its entire empire on the certainty of its own victory. Today, you took that certainty away from them, and empires built on certainty do not survive its loss easily." Back on Earth, in the war room 3 floors beneath a surface that would, for the first time in years, see genuine celebration rather than quiet grief, Admiral Reyes watched the battle's final reports arrive, with an expression that few of his surviving officers had seen on his face in longer than they could remember, something close to real hope, hard-won, and deeply earned. "Get me a channel to the Dawnbringer," he said finally, allowing himself a small, tired smile as he watched the last of the wreckage clear from the tactical display. "I think it's time we thank the people who just saved this entire species." 3 days after the battle, Elena stood once more in the same war room where this entire journey had begun, though the room itself felt different now, lighter somehow, despite the exhaustion still etched into every face around the table. Reyes greeted her with a firm handshake, and something that, for a man as reserved as he was, counted as genuine warmth. "The Council wants to see you," Reyes said. "All of you, actually. Commander Voss, Alvarez, Nandon, Rayner, and your friend Kale Threshy as well. They want to hear the whole story, from the people who lived it. They'll want to know what comes next, too," Elena said. "The Korath won't stay quiet forever. Whatever fleet they still have somewhere beyond our borders, they'll rebuild, and they'll come back angrier than before." "They will," Reyes agreed. "But we'll be ready in a way we weren't 3 years ago, or even 3 weeks ago. Rayner tells me the Dawnbringer's knowledge alone could reshape our shipyards within a year, maybe less, if we dedicate ourselves fully to understanding it. Shields, weapons, propulsion, all of it, years ahead of anything we've built on our own." "The Warden made it clear that knowledge isn't a shortcut," Elena said carefully. "It has to be earned properly, understood rather than just copied. If we rush it, we risk exactly the kind of mistake that hurt the Threne in their final days." "Then we won't rush it," Reyes said. "But Commander, for the first time in 3 years, we finally have the luxury of not rushing. That alone is worth more than I can properly put into words." The council meeting that followed was different from the tense, fearful gathering that had approved Elena's original mission weeks earlier. This time, the 9 representatives listened with something closer to wonder than suspicion, asking careful questions about the Dawnbringer's origins, about the Threnai's fate, about what safeguards would guide humanity's use of such overwhelming power going forward. Kale answered many of those questions itself, standing without guards this time, addressing the council not as a captured prisoner, but as an honored guest, whose warning had, quite literally, saved an entire species. One council member asked Kale directly, near the end of the long session, "Your people are still under Korath rule. Will you return to them?" Kale considered the question for a long moment before answering. "Not yet," it said finally. "My people need more than one defector's hope to break free of the Dominion. But perhaps, in time, with humanity's help, and with what the Dawnbringer might teach us both, that hope could grow into something real enough to matter. I would like to stay, for now, and help build whatever comes next. When the day arrives that my people have a true chance at freedom, I intend to be part of bringing it to them." Elena watched him say this, and thought of the 400 years he had described on their very first meeting, of a homeworld still standing under a flag that was not its own, of children taught a history, written by the species that had broken their ancestors. She thought, too, of Earth's own 3 years of losing, of Alvarez's brother, and every other soldier who had died, holding a line that had, until recently, seemed destined to fall, no matter how hard anyone fought to hold it. "You'll have our help," Elena said quietly, before the council could respond. "Whatever it takes, however long it takes. You gave us a chance when you didn't have to. We won't forget that." In the weeks that followed, the story of the battle spread across what remained of humanity's colonies and outposts, carried by survivors who had watched an ancient, alien ship turn the tide of a war that everyone had quietly begun to accept as already lost. Kale Threshy became, in time, something between a hero and a symbol, a defector who had risked everything to give another species the chance his own people had never received, and Elena Voss led the growing effort to understand the Dawnbringer fully, aware that whatever victories lay ahead, they would need every scrap of knowledge the ancient vessel still carried within its silent, patient halls. The war was not over. The Korath Dominion, wounded and humiliated, would return, eventually, with new fleets and renewed determination, and Earth would need to be ready when that day came. But for the first time in 3 long years, humanity stood not at the edge of defeat, but at the beginning of something else entirely, a real chance, hard-fought and dearly bought, to decide its own future, rather than simply survive whatever came next. And somewhere above a homeworld no longer quite so certain of its own ending, the Dawnbringer waited patiently in orbit, its ancient lights glowing softly in the dark, ready, at last, for whatever the future still had left to bring.